Welcome to the Expert's Journey podcast, where we're all about creating your path to impact. Join your hosts, Dixie Mary Carlton from Indie Expert Publishing and Mr. Web Marketing Brad Houck, as we look at how you can grow your business and influence by leveraging your knowledge for profit. Welcome to the Expert's Journeys podcast. In this episode, Dixie and myself will be discussing the practical benefits of merging speaking and publishing together and seeing what comes out the other end. So good morning, Dixie.
Good morning, Brad. How are you going today?
I'm going great.
Fantastic.
So interesting topic today, merging the two together and seeing what comes out the other end.
Yeah.
We never know when we start out where things are going to take us, but I suppose as we work our way through publishing and getting the book and having speaking tied to it, and that I suppose it opens up a whole realm of possibilities for us.
It does. And I'm really interested in this particular topic because when I first did my first book 20-something years ago, I was then introduced into the speaking industry and realized really quickly that there are so many great parallels between being a professional speaker and an author of nonfiction. And for my money, you can't really have one without the other. You have to be speaking about your book, and you have to have a book if you're a professional speaker, because everything points to each other. And so I really love how these things merge so well together.
Yeah, I suppose one of the key things we're going to look at is like how it elevates your authority and credibility. Obviously, having a book is something you can carry with you, something you show people. I mean, it's lovely. You pick up a book and you hold it up and go, look, a book I wrote. And everyone goes, ooh, real book.
They do, don't they?
I mean, even the difference between like this one, when I got it printed, when it arrived, it looks so much better than the ebook version, which I've, been giving people and sending and selling and that. But just to get a couple of printed copies, blew me away. Ooh, real book, Even I felt credible in myself at what I did. Which kind of freaked me out a bit because it's not like it's the first book that I've done. So yeah, definitely, you show people a book, it just changes the way they look at you, funnily enough.
And also I think when you've got more than one book, when you've got several books and you are shown to be, someone who's not just a one-hit wonder in that respect, you think about the music industry, we pay a lot more attention to guys like Ed Sheeran who are continually putting out music versus, I don't know, can't even think of someone who's only done one-hit wonders lately. But that's the difference, You know that if someone's taken the time to do a range of books or a series of books, they've got a lot more to say. So getting them to speak about, what they're writing about as well, as I say, it just goes hand in hand. So
yeah. So when we talk about being an author and being an authority, I mean, they're similar words, but not the same.
Mm-hmm.
What do you reckon the difference is, as far as that goes?
Well, I love this. And I've done a book, in fact, called From Idea to Authority. And I've got the ITY at the end of author as being that there is a difference. There is a difference between just being an author, but being an authority is someone who really knows your topic, who knows your topic well enough to stand up and on stage and speak about it. Plenty of people write good books, but there's a difference. And becoming an authority means you're not just writing one piece of information. You own that topic. You know your topic inside and out, and you know how to promote yourself as an expert of that topic. And that's the key. Promoting yourself as an expert on that topic is one of the most important things you can do as an author of nonfiction. And that's where the speaking comes in. You have to
and you can go on Amazon every day and find, YouTube videos and all sorts of things about, I publish 50 Kindle books a month and I make $1 million and all that. But just because you're pushing out books doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Anyone can program a bot to write a book these days. Let's face facts.
Well, that's really.
But actually write a book that has impact and sees you as an authority that then allows you to speak. That's a different kettle of fish.
Yes.
Because there's a difference between producing books and being an authority.
And not only that, to be an authority and to stand up and speak about it, you need to be telling stories. You need to be reassuring your audience or your readers that you are so well immersed in this industry or this topic that you are writing about, that you have those case studies, that you have those stories and examples of what you are talking about or what you are trying to get them to understand. I always say stories make the facts sticky. So if you are an authority on something, you will have enough great stories about what you know of that to be able to make those facts that you're trying to put together sticky. That also means that if you've got great storytelling skills and you can use the power of story to really make those facts that you're wanting to share sticky, you'll be remembered, you'll be more engaging, you'll be more interesting to the audience and to the readers, and there will be more buy-in or more credibility as well for people to buy into what you're talking about. And so that's, again, where I see them merging so clearly.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between stories and stories too. Like, for example, I tell firefighting stories, of course, and they're my personal stories. And sometimes you'll see a visceral reaction when I put pictures up and things like that because it flashes me back. And so you get these real stories. And then there's other people who tell stories like the starfish story, which has no real impact.
Yeah.
I hate the starfish story. I will bury the next person I hear.
Do you want to explain what the starfish story is very briefly?
I think we have actually in a previous episode, but starfish story is, there's a beach and an old man and a young boy are walking along the beach and there's thousands of starfish up on the beach and the old man's walking along and throwing them back into the beach. Now, there's 100 variations of this story. This is just one. And he's throwing them back. And the boy looks along the beach and he sees thousands of starfish and he goes, why are you doing that? It's not going to make any difference. And as the old man throws one in the water, he goes, well, it makes a difference to that one.
Yes.
Now, there's probably a dozen stories that I hear where I really desperately in the audience want to yell out, oh, for God's sake, get new material.
Yes.
It's embarrassing for someone to be on a stage and telling those stories. Like, they should not do it. And whoever is their guide, their mentor, should pull them up straight away and say, I don't care. Like, I heard one only last month in front of a whole group of other speakers. Someone told a story. It wasn't a starfish one, but it was another one that was exactly the same. And I won't say what it is because everybody will know what I'm talking about. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, no, you've got to be original. That is such an old story. It's there's no impact because I know the answer before you get to it. So therefore, you're not teaching me anything.
It becomes cliche.
Whereas if you told your own version of the story, it would work.
Yes. And that's, I think, where AI becomes a redundant thing in some ways for people who are developing their content. Because AI might pull up the starfish story well before it's going to ever even imagine what it could say about your own examples, your own stories. And, if you're using stories, they have to be credible. They have to be your own. They have to be, this is where integrity really becomes paramount. You have to tell your stories. You have to tell a story that you have a direct connection with. If for any reason it's not your own story, but it's a hearsay situation, you have to have real credibility around that. You have to have integrity around why you are telling that story. And you can't put AI onto the job for that.
No, your stories are your stories. And I'd encourage all listeners, I know it's hard to tell your own stories. I struggled with it for many years. But once I started going down that route where I was telling my stories, now I can finally see how I can use them in other areas, So my firefighting stories at first, I could not pull them across in my text speaking. Just wouldn't work. Now, suddenly, it's like I was lying in bed the other night and it just clicked and I went, oh, I'm talking about AI and the rush of AI coming in. I could tell a story about, lighting a backburn into a fire that's rushing in because it's exactly the same, image in my head. So the more you do stories and the more you use them in your books and you use them on stage, the better the impact will be on the people you're trying to actually impact.
Because you have to practice those stories. But for anyone who's struggling to actually understand how to unpack their own stories and tell their own stories, I wrote a resource that I give away free for people that helps you to understand how do you tell the story, what are the main points that you want to make in it, how do you get it better than just the way you would tell it around the dinner party. So happy to share that with anyone who wants to write in and ask for that. But there are ways and means of telling great stories, how to inject humor into it, for example.
Yeah. And humor is hard. some people are just naturally funny, but writing humor, on the other hand, is a whole other skill set. And it's one that can be learned. I mean, I know a lot of speakers and authors go to do stand-up, sessions, learn how to do stand-up because they want to bring comedy in. It's probably not for me. I'm either funny or I'm not. You get what you get. But, other friends are extremely funny and very clever at how they structure their funniness in the way that they put it into their speeches and the callbacks and, all of those little aspects to that. But again, it's a skill that can be learned and you can bring it into all your content.
Yeah. And that again,
so moving on.
Sorry, I'm just going to say that again comes into the integrity around how you tell the story, because you have to tell it in your way. You and Absolutely, I might tell the same story, the same event that happened to us in completely different ways. We have to learn how our storytelling style works, and doing that through the process of developing content for a book enables you to practice and unpack that.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I often talk to firefighters, for example, and you'll get a report on a fire, and one person will be standing next to the other person, and the story they tell you about the fire is entirely different. Yeah. And yet they were side by side through the whole incident. Because how one person perceives the event is totally different to how another person perceives the event. I remember one famously where the person said, we were surrounded by flames and I was terrified. I thought I was going to die. And the other person was like, they were like 30 centimeters high and they weren't going anywhere. And that was one person almost had a breakdown. The other person didn't.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely unbelievable, the different perspective on the same story. So even if you've been at the same place as someone else, your story is definitely going to be different.
That's right.
Okay, so moving on a little bit, I've got here, what have I got to ask you about? Using your book as part of your speaking ecosystem. This is probably a big one.
Yeah.
The before, the during, and the after events, because a book is there for multiple things. We often say it's a business card or it's not a business card. It's a this, it's a that. But there's definitely more to it than that. I think that you can be more structured than just, carrying one in your back pocket and pulling it out occasionally.
If it's going to fit in your big back pocket.
By the way, have you seen my book?
Look, I think it's really important that you plan your keynote or your workshop well in advance. It's also important that you plan your book content well in advance. Now, if you're really smart, you will plan you'll start with the end in mind, where you'll start with your book, you'll develop your content, you'll ideally use something like my Trivariant framework for unpacking what the chapter flows and what the content's going to be. And then you will work out, well, how do I now make that part of my keynote or my workshop or my training program? So what you then want to do is think about, well, how do I use these in all parts along the way? So you might start with your book. You might use your book to give to someone to hopefully get them to book you to speak. You'll probably have breadcrumbed all the way through your book the fact that you are a speaker or you are a trainer or a coach. So you'll get them to go to the landing page. You'll get them to then identify that you can speak for them or be engaged on a one-on-one or a coaching or a training opportunity. Then when you are at that training event or during that keynote event, you might be either selling your product or your books at the back of the room, or you might be giving away content or sampling content. You may be selling content, derivatives. You may be promoting that to trade journals and magazines, etc., talking about them on podcasts. If you have a book that you've written that you want to then use to get yourself onto a podcast, which will expand your market's awareness of your existence, then you also will send the book to whoever's your podcast host.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways you use your book, but your book also sits there at the event and brings people back to what it is that you've talked about, which is why I say they fit together so brilliantly, not only before you start speaking and before you start writing, but all the way through. And then afterwards, you may also follow up with, a workshop or a keynote where you say, by the way, if you want to capture this and more of what I've been talking about, go online and grab one of my copies of my book.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I suppose it's one of those things where you're building this ecosystem of information around you, and you've got, you're sending the book out and you're using it for this and using it for that. But also it does start to impact on your personal branding because you're now being seen as the person who wrote that book, or you're being the authority in that area. And you're starting to see that merging of the speaking with the publishing side there, where you become synonymous with a book. And I mean, you see that with people like Michael Gerber and names like that straight away. As soon as you say it, you think of, the book. And I think, that's the ultimate, I suppose. If you can have that sort of impact, that's pretty cool. But it doesn't always work that way, but you do get known from those things. So, for example, my nickname, my website, Mr. Web Marketing, it came from the fact that I wrote a book about web marketing, and I became known as kind of the person when you want to talk about, marketing online, go and talk to me. And most people can't say my last name, okay, because J-U-C-K comes with many, many variations, even though to me it's Hauk.
Yeah.
And so,
thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Web Marketing was far easier to remember. And to this day, there's plenty of people who will say, oh, yeah, Brad, Mr. Web Marketing.
Yes.
Straight away. And so it's amazing how things can cross over into your own personal branding and be permanent. Like, you can't run away from them. They're there forever.
Yeah. You have to build your brand. You have to incorporate your brand into your content into your brand, and you into what you're putting out there. And you can't half-ass it, Sorry if anyone's offended by the language. You can't half-ass that kind of thing. You've got to commit to it and be the person who is known for that. Look at Simon Sinek. Brilliant writer, brilliant presenter, very famous for one of the most popular TED Talks around about Start With Why. That was his book. That was the first book he wrote. He is that guy we all equate to, the Start With Why. But he's also written 2 or 3 other fantastic books that I actually enjoy even more than Start With Why. So, you have to start with something that gets you onto that platform that you can own and then build on. And again, the book is where you unpack all of the content and then move it onto the stage. If you're going to work from stages to pages or pages to stages, work out which way you want to go, but start with the end in mind. How do you want it to fit together? It's really simple.
Yeah, and neither way is easy. And let's make that really clear.
Yeah.
You can write a book and no one's ever going to read it if you don't market it properly. And it's the same with speaking. You can go, talk about how you're a speaker, but if you're not speaking, because you're not out there promoting yourself, you're not going to get those opportunities either. So, having all the intentions in the world are fantastic, but until you actually put the action behind them and, focus on doing them, you won't get any traction in the market, and you won't get known for those things. Even if you know you're the expert, even if you know you're the authority and you've written a great book on it and you've got a great speech, you've got to get out there and do it.
Yes.
You've got to get some traction. And that's hard work.
I've got an interesting situation around that very issue at the moment, in that I've also written, I'm known for writing and speaking about publishing and self-publishing and, tying all of the presenting and the speaking pages to stages. That's what I'm known for. But I've also written a couple of books that are completely separate to that topic. And when I tell people that I've written those books, because I don't speak on those topics, because I don't go out there and make a big song and dance about those particular books, they sit there and they just, meander very slowly out the door. Whereas my other product, that relates to the work that I do, sells really well. But when you sometimes want to step outside of what you normally speak about or write about, you do have to be prepared for that, which is also where sometimes people will use a non-de-plume, or maybe, and what I'm doing with one of my books is I'm actually gifting some of the content to someone who does specialize in an area that's related to that, and making sure that you license that. So sometimes you have to think a little bit outside the box about, yes, it may interest you, but you have to still think about, well, are you going to speak on that topic and that topic, or are you going to stay in your lanes and really focus on the one main topic? And I think focusing on the one main topic is the most critically important thing from a marketing point of view, It doesn't mean that you can't still use your content or your IP for making someone else, shine. So there's ways and means, and I think
it's interesting because one of the things I've been playing with is obviously social media and YouTube especially, and I have 2 different YouTube channels. One which is focused on AI and marketing and developing AI bots and all that sort of stuff. There's that one, but then I've got one to do with my leadership stuff, and they're completely different channels, and I don't promote either of them. I promote them within YouTube. They run their own audiences. YouTube finds audiences for them and own different things to different people on there. But in the real world, my business is, helping, people use AI and market online in their business so that they get more business. But it's kind of interesting how if you go into social media channels, you can actually have like 2 different Instagram accounts and be 2 entirely different people if you want to, which is kind of weird compared to the real world.
Yes, because in the real world, you cannot promote yourself as a speaker on 2 entirely separate topics. It's almost impossible. I'm sure there are exceptions out there, but it is almost impossible.
No, it's too hard. I've tried it. It's just not doable as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And mainly that's my personality style probably, but it's too hard.
Yeah.
You don't know what to say when someone says, what do you speak about? It's that simple.
Absolutely.
So sooner or later, you're going to have to draw a line under one of them. For me, it'll probably be the leadership stuff, but I'm going to use YouTube for that.
Yeah.
I'm reaching out to an international audience on YouTube, and I'm finding it's working. I put a little video up, I'm getting 400 or 500 people watching it. It's like, that's a bigger audience than I'd probably get in a room anyway. So I'm making the impact I want to make in that area to the people I want to reach. And from my business perspective, I'm going to, stick to my online marketing, my AI, and push down that route. And obviously, I'm just talking to you previously about the fact I'm about to, finish a book on marketing with AI. So, that book will tie to my speaking and, things will pull together a bit better.
And I think what we need to do, if somewhere down the line fairly soon, is actually tie this into a new topic that will cover more extensively on lead magnets with books and speaking, so that, that's all part of your marketing ecosystem. So let's save that topic for another day because it's an in-depth one, but it does tie very closely into that whole how you market yourself using the power of a book.
Yeah. And I mean, we're just talking about YouTube, but, publishing across different platforms can also, bring you great benefit. So, you were talking about using your book in different ways, before and during and after. And how you deliver the book too can also make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think, taking advantage of different platforms, it's definitely worthwhile.
Well, I think we should leave it there because that's a very robust conversation. We've touched on some real gemstones in that. And as I said, the how to unpack and tell a story, that's a free resource that anyone can write in and ask for.
And can they just go to you at indieexpertspublishing.com?
They can just go to indieexpertspublishing.com and they'll find it there as well in the resources section. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'll finish off there. So thanks for joining Dixie and I on the Expert's Journey today. If you've got any questions or thoughts, drop us a review or reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We like hearing back from people. If you like this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe and share. And if you need any help writing a book, see Dixie at indieexpertspublishing.com. And if you want help with AI or online marketing, please book a free chat with me at mrwebmarketing.com. We appreciate you tuning in and we look forward to having you with us again.